Okay, so as you can see, today's topic is Sarah as sister, Sarah as wife. It's a rather obscure story in the Old Testament, but I like it because it's one of these ones that the new church can explain. And it's a new church specialty to explain these kind of things, because why else would anybody care about why Abraham describes his wife as a sister and sister as a wife in these kind of context. So I like to explain this story in terms of, the modern world is theories of learning. They talk about 4 stages of learning that we have. We have a unconscious incompetence. We don't know what we're not good at. We don't know what we don't know. We go from that stage to a conscious incompetence. Oh, I know that I'm not very good at rocket science. Well, then the next stage up is you go to conscious incompetence, right? You know what it is to do, but you're not very good at doing it. And then you go to unconscious. I did that wrong, didn't I? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did. You're good at it, but you're aware that you're not good at it. The unconscious competence. And then you go to the final stage of unconscious competence. You're so good at it, you don't even have to think about it. Like tying your shoes. You're unconsciously very good at it. It's just a rote thing. And this story in Sarah, sister and wife, it's moving to the place where you have to think about doing the right thing to where it's kind of written on your heart. That's the stage you're going through in this story. And this is what we'll see reflected in the text. So let's get into it because it helps explain what I'm trying to say, but perhaps not doing a very good job of it. But context-wise, this happens in early Genesis. Abram's been called by the Lord. The Lord says, "You're my guy. I want you to go off and be a great nation." And so, of course, Abraham being obedient, that's his thing, that's his calling card, his obedience. Abraham says, "Yep." At this point, it's Abram, yeah. He is being called, and so he goes off and does that. So here we pick it up, Genesis chapter 12. Now there was a famine in the land, and Abram went down to Egypt to live there a while because the famine was severe. As he was about to enter Egypt, he said to his wife Sarai, "I know what a beautiful woman you are. When the Egyptians see you, they will say, 'This is his wife.' Then they will kill me, but let you live. Say you are my sister, so that I will be treated well for your sake, and my life will be spared because of you." When Abram came to Egypt, the Egyptians saw that Sarai was a very beautiful woman. And when Pharaoh's officials saw her, they praised her to Pharaoh, and she was taken into his palace. He treated Abram well for her sake, and Abram acquired sheep and cattle, male and female donkeys, male and female servants, and camels. But the Lord inflicted serious diseases on Pharaoh and his household because of Abram's wife, Sarai. So Pharaoh summoned Abram. "What have you done to me?" he said. "Why didn't you tell me she was your wife? Why did you say, 'She is my sister,' so that I took her to be my wife? Now then, here is your wife. Take her and go." Then Pharaoh gave orders about Abram to his men, and they sent him on his way with his wife and everything he had. All right? So there you go. Take your wife. Get out of here. This is the story of Sarah being presented as a sister, but taken as a wife by Pharaoh. But there is truth in this, in that Sarah was his sister and his wife. It was a half-sister. It was his dad's other wife, daughter kind of deal. So it was a half-sister scenario. And the odd thing about the sequence is that the same thing basically happens again about 8 chapters later. It's just with a different person. So it's Abraham at this point. He's going into another land, and it's the kingdom of Abimelech. And Abimelech sees Sarah. "Oh, wow, she's pretty. I'll take her to be my wife." Abraham says, "Yeah, she's my sister." And the same basic thing happens. Except God comes to Abimelech in a dream and says, no. Don't take another man's wife. That's not good. And Abimelech says, what? I didn't know she was his wife. He said she was the sister. And God's like, I know, but she's his wife. Don't do this. So Abimelech calls Abraham and says, what are you doing? You lied to me. You fooled me. You're trying to make me sin. So, and he goes on, what have I done to you that you're trying to get me in trouble? And Abraham says, well, I thought you'd kill me if you knew that she was my wife. And it's not unreasonable, right? If you think about David and Bathsheba, all right, David sees a beautiful woman, takes her to be his wife, and what does David have done with Uriah the Hittite? Has him killed. So Abraham isn't actually just being paranoid here. He has a legitimate concern about his life if somebody else wants to take his wife. So in the end of this little story with Abimelech, Abimelech gives Sarah back to Abraham and says, here's a bunch of gifts I'm going to give you to restore her back to your wife, and go back to the promised land, and off you go. Now, whenever we read something in Scripture, it's probably a good perspective to think, well, the Lord has put this there on purpose. It's important that we get this. But when the Lord puts the same basic story in there twice, you might think, this is actually really important because he's really trying to make a point. You wouldn't really think about it in terms of this being an important story because it's odd, it's kind of obscure, but clearly if Abraham is presenting his wife as a sister twice, there's something of significance here. Now this is what the new church does well at resolving. Why is Abraham doing this? Well, start with your basic symbolism here. Abraham represents divine love. It's this highest of the high loves. Celestial love, the divine itself, however you want to call it, but this is top of the heap. Sarah is about truth. So Sarah as sister, it was true, right? She was true. But there's two different types of truth here. We get this kind of hint in the creation story. All right? When the Lord creates the waters, there's waters above and there's waters below. So, two kinds of water. And I think the example that Swedenborg uses most frequently when trying to describe these two types of truth is, you look outside and you see the sun rise. And you look out in the evening, the sun sets. The sun rises and sets, obviously. But does it really? No. No, the earth revolves around the sun. The sun doesn't move in the sky so much as we move around it. So you have a basic truth that the sun rises and sets, but this kind of higher truth that actually no, we revolve around the sun. And it's the same kind of thing that's happening here. There is a level of truth, but there's a higher way of looking at things. And Sarah, as sister, is that lower level of truth. Sarah as wife is this higher. And we'll dig into a little bit more about what this is. That lower level of truth is about knowledge. Abraham is going to Egypt. Abram at this point. Abram is going to Egypt to acquire food. But Egypt, it's just in general about scientific world. It's about knowledge, about navigating through the world. How do you operate a business? How do you navigate bureaucracy, right? This is Egypt kind of knowledge. So when Abram's going to Egypt to get food, well, that's what she is. She is knowledge. She's navigation. And if you think about sibling relationships, you go home, you go, oh yeah, this is my brother. Yeah, this is my sister. There's a certain kind of relationship you have with your siblings that, suffice it to say, is different than with a spouse. Right? What's worse than, as a teenager, there's nothing worse than being put in the zone of, oh, well, you're like a brother to me. Right? You're interested in a girl and the girl says, you're like a brother to me. You don't want that. That's a different kind of relationship. So Abram is starting off saying, well, she's a sister, and it's showing us how our relationship to truth starts off with. It starts off as, I'm reading the word, these are stories, it's knowledge. It's knowledge. We kind of sometimes pick and choose. Oh, well, I like this story, I like this commandment. Yes, I'll follow this. No, I won't follow that. It's that kind of thing. We see this reflected also with Jesus in his ministry, because after he's born, where do they go? Egypt. What does he acquire? Knowledge. He comes back at age 12 and he's preaching or teaching at the temple. They're all impressed with this 12-year-old boy's knowledge. I use the word knowledge because I think there's a reasonable case to be made that he's not preaching with wisdom. He's impressing all these old guys with how much he knows. He knows a lot about the world. You know, some 12-year-old kid walks up to you, starts teaching you about the ins and outs of the scriptures and all the intricacies. You go, wow, this kid knows some things. But it's not until he's 30 that he starts preaching with wisdom. Right? It's at 30 he's teaching the high-level stuff. He says, oh, you've been told not to commit adultery. But what I'm telling you is don't even look at a woman lustfully, because when you've done that, you've committed adultery in your heart. Raising the stakes, right? Oh, you've been told marriage, you can get divorced. But I'm telling you, actually, marriage is forever. They're neither given in marriage in heaven or never given in marriage or taken in marriage. So he's raising it up a bit higher. It's going from, yeah, I know these stories and I'm supposed to be a good person, to taking to the point of, I just do this, right? How many times do we have a lesson in church or a class, whatever, and you think, I don't really want to do this. I don't really want to be nice today. I'm feeling grumpy. I didn't sleep well. I don't really want to be nice to this person. I find this person irritating. But I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to actually do the right thing. This is going from Sarah as sister to Sarah as wife. The Lord is saying you've got to get to a place where you just kind of do this unconsciously. The Lord's giving us an opportunity with Sarah as sister to kind of churn away at the truth. Try it on for size, to kind of put it as grist for the mill, where we churn it over in our minds and think about it and ponder it and question it. And we ask ourselves, well, is this something I have to do? Is this just good advice? Is this a recommendation? Or do I really have to do this? And the idea is we get to a place where we've gone through all these mental gymnastics about what we do with it, to a place where we approach the truth and say, this is holy ground. This is holy ground. You know, a marriage covenant is holy. It's raising it up a bit higher. And we say, oh no, I'm doing this because I'm wedded to it. I'm doing this because this is who I am. It's a different mental space. Some years ago, I was talking with one of the guys up at Roseville, and it was one of these, I forget what it was one of these controversial church subjects. And he was saying, you know, I think science actually disagrees with what Swedenborg is saying. But in my experience of life, every time I've felt that way, eventually it gets proven that Swedenborg was right. Because it usually comes around that it's not Swedenborg that gets corrected, it's my understanding of things that gets corrected. And this is how we are when we're wedded to something. We say, okay, well, this is what I believe. I'm not questioning it. I'm not, worried about whether I'm right or wrong. It's like, no, this is the truth. I'm with it, hell or high water, right? This is what I'm doing. And that's the way a marriage is, right? I am with this person no matter what. We are stuck together like glue. It's a difference to Sarah's sister, your kid's sister. You say, no, forget it. I'm going off with my friends. Have a nice night. See you later. This is a big difference. So, we've seen in other examples, right? Do you struggle to come to church, or do you just come because this is what you do every Sunday? Right? These are big differences. So the Lord is telling us that he wants us to progress from that state of struggling to do the truth to just having it be a part of our life. It's a divine marriage. It has divine authority in our life when we have that kind of relationship. It's transformative. So when we look forward to how we could be in the future with this, we say, okay, I'm going to go ahead and do what this says, and I don't even have to internally acknowledge that I'm doing what the truth is saying. It just happens. This is what I want to point you towards in the reading from True Christianity, and it talks about even Jesus going through this development. It says, the divine design, or the divine order in some translations, is that we arrange ourselves for receiving God and prepare ourselves as a vessel in a dwelling place where God can enter and live as if we were his own temple. We have to do this preparation by ourselves, yet we have to acknowledge that the preparation comes from God. This acknowledgement is needed because we do not feel the presence or the actions of God, even though God is in fact intimately present and brings about every good love and every true belief we have. This is the divine design we follow, and we have to follow to go from being earthly to being spiritual. All right, so you've got to start by acknowledging that the Lord is working on you. The Lord had to go through the same process to make his earthly human, to make Jesus divine. This is why he prayed to the Father. This is why he did the Father's will. This is why he attributed everything he did and said to the Father. This is why he said on the cross, my God, why have you abandoned me?" In this state, the Lord appears to be absent. How many of us have walked through that where we feel like, oh, well, where is God? He's not present. We look at the world, we look at our life, and we think we're not getting what we want. We say, God, where are you? Why have you forsaken me? After this state comes a second one, the state of being in a partnership with God. In the second state, we do basically the same things, but now we do them with God. We no longer need to attribute to God everything good that we intend and do everything true that we think and say in the same way as we used to, because now this acknowledgement is written on our heart. It is inside everything we do and everything we say. Sarah, as wife, you're not explicitly saying, I'm doing this in the name of God, or I'm doing this knowing that God is with me, I'm doing this for his sake. It's just there. It just underpins your mental state, the way you do life. It's just there. You're doing the same things, but the internal state is different. The internal state is different. How many times have we gone through a day or a week and we think to ourselves, I really don't want to do this, but I know it's the right thing to do. I know what I'm supposed to do. And we cajole and we push and we motivate ourselves and we do that. God can feel absent. I don't want to do this. It's not very fun when we're forcing ourselves to do things. But when we start seeing the world differently and we start seeing the world as a place that, God is not just next to us or around us, like he is part of our lives, like, our bodies are his temple, then we see we're being directed towards a different path. We're being directed towards doing things as if there's a wedding, we are married to the Lord, we are doing his will as if he's our partner. So when we go through life, we're supposed to be thinking about making this step from this conscious competence. We're thinking about it and doing it to an unconscious competence where it just rolls off. We don't have to feel bad in many times when we start seeing Sarah as our sister. It is a stage we go through. The Lord says, yes, I understand when you learn something new for the first time, you're going to have to wrestle with it and tussle with it and figure out whether you like it or understand all these things. I get that's part of it. But he's also saying in these stories that he's repeated twice for us in the early scriptures is that what we should strive for is for truth being something that we're not just treating like a sister, but the truth should be something that should be treated like our wife. Amen.